Today I'm going to be discussing my experiences with vegan products. I'm not going to be showing any food preparation, any cooking, any recipes or anything. So if that's what you're looking for in this video, you're wasting your time. I, for the past 2 weeks, have been passively making more vegan inclined choices because I've been one of those people who hasn't been a believer in that stuff. Like, I understand the benefits, but when it comes to people who are really aggressive about it, I think looking at it from a political perspective got in my way. And I remember that I have tried some stuff before and I just said, this is never going to work out for me. So anyway, for starters, the one thing I have to say that is particularly upsetting, frustrating, whatever you want to call it, is how stupidly expensive these products are. Anything plant-based, you can expect to pay like 2-3 times as much compared to the base product. I'm really not sure why that is, but if I had to take guesses from what usually happens in businesses, either the demand is high, but the supplies are actually low, or since these products tend to be of higher quality, since you need higher quality to ensure that this stuff works out a little better and it's labeled as clean eating, maybe that's where some of it comes from. Greater quality, it's just more expensive because it's not as easily manufactured for the masses. Or it may also be that maybe the demand is not as high as we think it is. Whatever the reason is, I have not researched that. I'm not going to, because I don't care. I just know that the fact is that this shit is expensive and there is no way that I could afford to pay between $6 to $10 on a product that's like 3 to 4 servings. I just cannot do it. I feel like that's the reason why a lot of people don't really go for it much either. When it comes to purchasing, making this a regular part of my day, I cannot imagine a life in which I can budget for that. I definitely am not in that position. This is certainly something that even if I wanted to, I wouldn't be able to do unless I deprive myself of eating like I'm used to. The amount that I feel I require would drastically need to be cut. The second point would be how much I hate the consistency of a lot of these products. Most of them that I have tried that are prepared, like the recipe is there, all you gotta do is heat it up and it's ready to eat. Especially stuff that is made from like soy nuggets types of deal, or like some kind of pea protein. I hate how rubbery it is. It's like you're chewing on some kind of edible plastic. And I completely detest that. I hate it so much. It's not a consistency I'm accustomed to. The worst part about it is that as much as they promote it as it's fake chicken, it's fake meat, it'll remind you of beef, it'll remind you of real chicken and everything. I have tried multiple brands and I'm like, bitch, what is wrong with your taste buds? This does not remind me of the real thing that we're trying to imitate based on plants at all. At all. And especially with tofu, I knew from experiencing it before. I bought it before, but when I bought it about 7 years ago for the first time, I think I only bought it once. I really didn't know much about it. I knew it was like a sponge and you're supposed to drain it, but I just looked at it and I said, how do I drain this? So I kind of like pressed it together for a little bit until it crumbled into a piece of shit. And then I said, okay, I guess I'll just get rid of the water that comes in the container and then just straight eat it. And then I realized, I was so insane because anything that comes prepackaged with water in it, you should definitely give it a rinse because you never know if the worker who processed that had any integrity. Anything could have gone wrong back then when I tried that. But anyways, I just looked at it and I'm like, I've eaten this before when it's prepared and hot and warm or in salads. but I had no idea how to go about it. This time around, I drained it by placing some kind of a board on top of it and then placing something kind of heavy, like a full jar of pasta sauce on top of it. I left it like that for about half an hour. It turned out just fine. I could see the difference. It was easier to handle. It was still fragile, but it was more easy to try to slice it into whatever shape you wanted it to be, cubes or strips, whatever. I decided to do cubes, but while I was cooking it, it kind of turned into a scramble because I kept turning it a lot, since it's supposed to be like meat, like ground beef or something. Meat is something that you definitely gotta flip around a few times. And treated it just like that, and believe it or not, as much spices as I put in it deliberately, since I knew that this is a very bland product, as much vegetable as I injected onto that bitch. Like I did onions and bell peppers, red and orange. And I'm telling you, I drowned my stupid pot with those things. And I let them marinate in there and cooking. That mess was gross. I mean, even though I had all those spices in there, I used a blend of like 5 different spices. I was like sprinkling it like crazy until the product barely looked like what it is, which is tofu. Like I really covered it up. It was still bland. Somehow it was still fucking bland. And the one mistake I made is that I usually cook, if it's salmon, I use a lemon. If it's beef, I use a lime. But I usually squeeze half of a lime or a lemon onto this meat while it's cooking. I have been foregoing that because I kind of forget to pick it up. Since I'm not cooking fish or meat, it doesn't register in my brain that I should still try that regardless. So I bought another round of tofu, another package. We'll see how it goes this time. I intend to use that lemon or lime. But what I hate the most is after I had that shitty experience, I went online to look for some recipe ideas, see what people do with it. And everybody kept saying to use a sauce. Use some kind of East Asian culinary sauce, like soy sauce or things like that. And I said, but the whole point is to eat clean. This shit has a lot of sodium. No, I don't like to put sauce. I never cook with sauces, ever. I know how to create sauces by blending things together, but I don't like to have a pre-made sauce. And I honestly do not like things to be coated with sauce. I like things to be just dry, not drenched with something. That was the major turn off. I didn't see anything that resonated with the way that I cook. But I really feel like getting that lime, getting that lemon is going to do what it's supposed to do. Another thing that I do, particularly when I cook with fish, is I use vinegar. I like to marinate my salmon with lemon and vinegar. Am I supposed to do that to tofu? What's going to happen if I expose this tofu thing to all that acid, you know? I may or may not try doing maybe like a teaspoon of vinegar, do the rest, but I cannot imagine treating it exactly how I treat my fish to go very well with it. Some of the other sauces that were suggested were really sweet. Like say, try this tofu as if it were an orange chicken or something. Use this and that sauce. And then I looked at how much sugar it has in it, and it was just drowning in sugar. The worst part about sauces like that is that the serving size that's recommended with it is usually very, very, very little. It's like 1 teaspoon or something, 2 teaspoons. And you end up using like 6 times more than what is recommended. But anyway, that was the frustrating aspect about looking for ideas and recommendations online. To be fair, I only tried maybe 3 sources, as opposed to particularly saying, hey, how can I create some kind of Italian inspired tofu or French style inspired tofu, anything like that. I didn't try that. I didn't think I would have to. But apparently, tofu being, I guess, originally a Chinese product, they are going to give you more Chinese inclined recipes. At any rate, and then I tried other products that are supposed to be pre-seasoned and stuff. And I'm not going to say the names of any of those brands that I tried because I'm not sponsored by any of them. The only reason I mention the names of restaurants I end up reviewing is because I have no choice. If I call something the Big Mac, you know where the Big Mac is coming from. So I might as well disclose it. Now, I will say this. The interesting thing about being in this type of diet is that I do not require as much food to feel full and satisfied and full of energy for longer periods of time. Not that I was ever skeptical about that. If you're eating like nutritious food that is light as well, that's just the effect it's going to have in the human body. I am thrilled to report that when it comes to how it feels on the stomach, how I feel overall after eating, I feel much better, which that's really the whole push and the whole point of this as a diet. It's really stated by those who are religiously involved with it that this is how they feel. And it's true. It makes sense. You're getting your vegetables, you're getting your protein, and the sources are just much cleaner. Even the brands that had their seasoning included in it, again, that texture was fucking horrible. The flavor, as much as I know that they put into the product, given that the color of the product compared to the original flavor is like you can see the seasoning in it, and you open the package and that smell just hits you and you're thrilled because you know you're about to have something really good, and then you cook that shit and the flavor's not there. It is so disappointing. It is so frustrating. It is such a massive letdown because one of these things, I think it cost me like $7, and it turned out to be bland as fuck. I mean, the first time I tried it, I didn't have cut up vegetables. Like I didn't have any onions, I didn't have any peppers. And since it was already pre-seasoned, which I should know better for growing up as a kid, I used to consume stuff like that, stuff that brought its own seasoning. And mom kept saying, remember that you need to add a little more to enhance it because the manufacturer is going to be really stingy about it, this and that. When you're a kid, at least your taste is amplified, but when you get older and your senses start changing, that's when you really perceive the difference and blandness in things. But I mean, this thing was just, I might as well have bought the original flavor because it was absolutely bland and gross. Another one that I tried was, it's supposed to be the replacement for ground beef. I threw that into a taco shell and that stupid rubbery consistency killed me. It was awful, and on top of that, it was bland. And mind you, I tried this 2 times. I tried this once without my ingredients, and the second time, since I knew what to expect, I said, okay, it needs this much of this spice, this much of this other one, this much lime juice, this and that. It did not fix it at all. This thing does so bad about absorbing flavor or retaining the flavor. It is absolutely insane. I just cannot believe it. But it also makes sense given that since this is made from soy stuff, I guess soy just doesn't do well absorbing flavor or something. I'm not sure, but soy nuggets, pea protein, or something like that. But it was just incredibly frustrating that I tried to spice this thing up using all of the things that I regularly use that makes everything super good. and this thing just wasn't having it. But at the end of the day, I continually focused on the fact that this is filling, even though it's expensive. I find that if I stick to the serving, it works just fine. Not always, because what I had today, the recommendation was to have 2 little pieces of this thing, and I ended up having 3 because I know my body, and I have been on this diet for about 2 weeks to know what I would require. Just to be a little more clear and transparent about it, it doesn't mean that I have been vegan for 2 weeks. It means that I have been actively going for vegan products as opposed to the stuff that I'm used to from like the meat or seafood department. But I still added cheese to some of the stuff, like that taco that I talked about. I added cheese, real animal cholesterol infused cheese, and it still didn't help it. And I'm not going to drown it on cheese because that's not the point. That's not the idea. I feel like that's killing the progress. That just convinces me that even if I were to be aggressively vegan, everything that I enjoy, I would have to give up, and that's just not cool. It's not fair, and I would rather live a shorter life full of pain and inflammation, which it's not foreign to me to live in pain and stuff, than just not have fun with what I'm eating. And even when I tried different things and tried some of the stuff with flavor in it, it just, say that I bought something that had a taco seasoning to it, and I decided to add my own separate taco seasoning to it, it still remained bland. So that was the frustrating part. For anyone whom this works for, this is not meant to bash your choices, bash your diet. That's what makes you happy. That's what you like. You go for it. But for some of us, I think this is not the diet for everybody, because unfortunately, most of us did not grow up wired with those kinds of flavors. For some of us, what we eat is just part of our culture. So to completely change that overnight, it takes too much effort. Most people's concern would be that this is not affordable. Most of the aggressive vegans who I know are actually people who come from money. And some of them happen to be people I see stuff about online, like celebrities or something. So it's not like I personally know these people anyway, but it's also not like these people are struggling to hire chefs to give them ideas, hire people to give them nutritional advice and stuff. So just consider that even if you're an average person who doesn't have a lot of money and you're making this work out for you, good for you. Like, your flavor, your taste happens to naturally benefit you. But for the average person, this just ain't gonna work out. But anyway, that's just my personal opinion. I will definitely try to, at least once a week, conduct the sacrifice of buying one of these things that tasted a little better. I think that for most of the time, I will go for the tofu, even if it was probably the second blandest thing I had out of all of this. I must say that it feels nice. I feel like I don't struggle to digest it as much. I haven't had any stomach problems, and I don't feel restless. I feel better overall eating this type of thing. At the same time, when I think about how much it cost me to eat just a fraction of what I'm accustomed to, it's very discouraging, and it kind of psychologically, it undoes the progress that I have done by eating cleaner, So what do I value most? My emotional well-being or my physical well-being? I just wanted to share that that's something I've been up to, just to give you my opinion, experience, thoughts. You guys let me know what your diets are like. If you happen to be someone who's more plant-based And if you have really good ideas for how to conduct the miracle of adding flavor to something that is absolutely flavorless, and yeah, just any tricks that you might have to maybe keep me encouraged. It's not like my goal is to be 100% vegan. I know I'm not going to. I cannot imagine a life in which I am reading the labels for everything and make sure that I see the little V for vegan logo or other products, look at them and be like, oh, this has milk. I don't want to. I don't feel like it. Unfortunately, the diet that I regularly had, I naturally happened to stay away from a lot of animal product anyway. Worst stuff I would do were pizzas, chocolate milk, my fish and beef. I'm not really concerned about the implications of consuming meat in my body because I happen to naturally not be someone who gravitates toward that type of thing. But yeah, I find that what has helped me the most has been to stay away from fast food. That's really the key for me. But at home, I usually cooked pretty clean anyway. I also cannot imagine foregoing cheese on my salads. Like I do blue cheese or gorgonzola cheese, and I just cannot imagine skipping that, especially for salads such as spring mix, where you have like baby lettuce and arugula. Ugh! And does it have baby kale? It might have baby kale. But man, those are some of the grossest vegetables out there, especially raw. But at least the cheese, along with a little bit of dressing, makes it a little better. But anyways, you guys, that's pretty much it from me. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you soon.